again, everyone! Today I wanted to talk about some of my terrible faves. I don't think it's a secret that I enjoy media that would be considered bad. I'd say most of my favorite games and animes are considered terrible, or at the very least, some of the less popular installments of their franchises. Now, I don't know what this says about me as a person, but I like to think that this makes me a creative and open-minded individual, and definitely not that I have terrible taste and should be burned at the stake. The biggest offender on my list of terrible media is, of course, Vampire Knight. I briefly mentioned it in one of my animated shorts, but the English dub of Vampire Knight is one of my favorite animes of all time. If you don't know what Vampire Knight is, it's a shoujo anime that follows Yuki Cross, a student at the prestigious Cross Academy. She's the adopted daughter of the headmaster, and alongside her adopted brother Zero Kiryu, is tasked with keeping the peace between the day class, who are humans, and the night class, the vampires. Kaname Kuron, a pureblood vampire, is the leader of the night class, and is mysteriously tied to Yuki's missing memories. He appears to have his own motives and is also very fond of Yuki, who he gives special treatment to despite his classmates' opinions. He also really hates Zero, and Zero really hates him. Spoiler warning, but Zero is secretly a vampire. As he was turned into a vampire by pureblood and not born as one, he is looked down upon, as humans who are turned into vampires eventually lose their minds and go feral. When Yuki finds out about Zero's worsening condition, as he's slowly dropping to level E, she lets him drink her blood in secret. This creates a love triangle between Yuki, Zero, and Kaname. My friends were all talking about Team Edward versus Team Jacob, but for me, it was Team Kaname versus Team Zero. Back in the day, I will admit that I was Team Kaname. Listen, I was watching this as it was being played on TV, and I wasn't old enough to look up the ending online. How could I have known what was to come? The reason Vampire Knight is notorious for being a terrible show is that near the end of season 2, they reveal, spoilers, that Yuki and Kaname are actually pureblood vampire siblings. And then they kiss. Great! Nice job getting me all invested and then suddenly dropping that out of nowhere. There's even a scene that plays when they're younger where they talk about how pureblood vampires usually marry their siblings and ugh. Thankfully, they stopped making the show after season 2, so I can just enjoy the first season and a half in peace. The manga continues on, but I've never actually read it. I do know, however, that Yuki ends up having a kid with both Zero and Kaname, and the two kids end up in a heavily implied lesbian relationship. Also, Kaname isn't actually her brother. He's her great-great-great-grandpa in her brother's body. It just keeps getting worse. After finding all this out, I still can't help but really enjoy the first half of the series. It's super dramatic and edgy and was perfect for 13-year-old me to hyperfixate on. Whenever I rewatch it, I get sucked right back into the story and characters, and so it will forever hold a special place in my heart and a dark place in my brain. The next contender on my list is, you guessed it, Danganronpa. Danganronpa is a visual novel killing game set in a post-apocalyptic world where hope and despair clash. It's very campy and has an extremely edgy sense of humor, with characters swearing like sailors and every second line being an inappropriate joke. The executions are also extremely graphic, and the fandom was seen as an edgelord wonderland full of 12-year-olds. When I told my friends that I was getting back into it, they were like, "Isn't that a game for edgy kids?" And I said, yes. Yes, it is. Mid-2024, I started watching the Game Grumps' playthrough of the second game and got immediately obsessed. However, my Danganronpa days actually started way back when the anime first aired in 2013. I recently looked through my old Tumblr and there was just so much Mondo X Taka fan art. At the time, I had no way of playing the game, so my only interaction with the series was through the anime. I remember watching the first execution and crying because I thought it was so scary. My favorite game in the series is Danganronpa 2. It just has such a great vibe and all the characters were so fun to watch. My favorite characters in number 2 are Fuyuhiko and Peko Peko. Most characters in Danganronpa don't really get any character development, so seeing the story play out between these two was really interesting and really heartbreaking. Now, the main offender for the series, and the reason why a lot of people hate it, is the writing. After the first game, the story just goes downhill, with V3 really pulling the plug on the whole series. Like, what was that ending? You just threw away an entire universe you had built up in exchange for a world that's 10 times more boring. I could make a whole video on my thoughts about V3. There is just so much agony within me. On another note, because it's a visual novel game, the dialogue really needs to hook the player. However, Danganronpa dialogue can be quite messy. it repeats itself, can drag on far too long, and can even end up making the class trials way more confusing than they need to be. Some of the murder cases are also so dumb. The third trial in Danganronpa 2 still annoys me so bad because what do you mean the killer used wallpaper to create a fake pillar around a dead body? I don't think wallpaper works like that. The thing that keeps me coming back for more is definitely the characters. The one thing Danganronpa does exceptionally well is create interesting characters. Miyu, Gonta, Kibo, Tenko, I love you guys. The music and art style are also super unique and recognizable. And the animation. Oh my gosh, the animation style is one of my favorite parts of the whole series. Do I recommend you play Danganronpa? Yes, but don't get your hopes up for a satisfying ending. I'm also super excited for Danganronpa 2x2, and I'm placing my bets that Fuyuhiko will die first. I actually want to make a full video about my 2x2 predictions, so I'll leave my reasoning for later. But what about you guys? Let me know what your terrible tastes in media are. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!